Welcome to the Michael Ouzas podcast.
Welcome to the Michael Ouzas podcast. Today we welcome Darryl Boyce. Darryl's played in the OHL before going to CIS, played over 270 AHL games, over 80 NHL games, spent some time in Europe, and welcome to the show, Darryl Boyce.
Thanks, Mike. Great to be on.
Yeah, awesome to see you. Where are you at these days?
I'm in St. John's, New Brunswick. Actually, I should rephrase that. It's St. John, New Brunswick.
Yeah, you should get that right if you're living there.
Yeah, that's right.
So let's start at the beginning. I mean, obviously, you're a hockey player. How did you get into hockey? You're from out east.
Well, just like anyone, parents strapped skates on my feet at probably 3, 4, or 5 years old, and just a game that fell in love with from the onset. And, so fortunate to be of that probably 1% of people to be able to make a living out of playing hockey, and was able to travel the world, met my wife and had 3 kids along the way. So it's been a passion, and it's something that is provided for my family.
That's awesome. And did you play in St. John, or you're from PEI originally?
Yeah, I'm from Prince Edward Island originally, and played my OHL. I played in the OHL during my major junior career. From there, I think we're going to get into it a little bit, but had a sort of a journey as to how and where I went to make it to ultimately the NHL, AHL, and into leagues in Europe.
Yeah, definitely want to get into that. And I'm curious, though, if you're out on the island, like, how did you end up in the OHL versus the Q? Because obviously the Quebec League is much closer to you guys. How did you end up in the Ontario League?
Yeah, I guess for dinosaurs like me, back in the day, the Prince Edward Island and Newfoundland didn't have Quebec major junior teams. So we were more or less undeclared players. And my family had a connection. Dave Cameron's brother was my baseball coach growing up, so we knew of Dave, and Dave was in Toronto coaching the St. Mike's at the time. So we made those connections, and when it came time to choosing a league, at least having that familiar face or knowing the family, we just felt comfortable picking the OHL to ultimately get drafted into, if that was the case. And luckily, it all worked out. Got drafted by St. Mike's, and spent time with Dave for 3 years of my 4 in St. Mike's.
Yeah, awesome. And for those that don't know, we played together in St. Mike's. And after St. Mike's, so you had your 4-year career in the OHL, you decided to go to the Canadian University route, to the CIS, University of New Brunswick. What was the decision to go there versus going to pro? And for those that don't know, typically you can either, after the OHL, players usually go to either university or they try to go pro from there. So what was your journey in going to the CIS?
Yeah, I had very limited options. I think the running joke, I think it was called the Greenville Growlers. They were the typical letter that you got as an overage player in the Ontario Hockey League. So I at least got my letter to be invited to the Greenville team. Other than that, I didn't really have any options. So playing in the OHL for 4 years, you get some sort of contribution depending on where you were drafted and how you negotiated a school package. So I accumulated a little bit of money that could be used towards college, and I just didn't want to throw that away on a whim on pursuing a possible very short professional career. So I thought, it'd probably be in my best interest to at least go and make good use of that education fund that I've built up. And again, having a PEI connection with Gardner McDougall, who was coaching UMB at the time, a familiar face, and somewhere that I definitely thought that I could, one, go to school, become educated, but more importantly for me at the time was to sort of fully round out my game as a hockey player and take on a different role that I was used to playing in the OHL.
And what did that look like? And I think this is a interesting question is that a lot of players, you have a certain identity when you're playing the OHL of the type of player you are, or what kind of line you play. And when you went to the CIS, you really exploded. You started getting points, and obviously you won a national championship. How did how was that transition to CIS, and what was that like for you when you went there? And you only were there for 2 years, and we'll get into that soon too. But what was that like where you were able to, take on a different role and, just kind of, like you said, become a more well-rounded player?
Yeah, in the OHL, I think my highest goal totals was like 16, 17. So, as an overage player in major junior hockey now, if you're only scoring 16, 17 goals, you might not even make a major junior team these days as a forward being an overage player. So, my point totals in the OHL or in major junior hockey were never crazy. I was, 50 points, I think was my highest total. So when I went to university, I think actually a lot, I'll give a lot of credit to John Elkin, Mike, and our time spent out at Elkin School, and you know, working on my shot, working on my game with you at lunch hours. And when I came down to university, I just took a different mindset as to the player that I wanted to be and the way I wanted to play the game. I wanted to play a more offensive style of game, and going somewhere new allowed me to reinvent myself. And that's exactly how I approached it. And it just followed me, and things just sort of started to click. And I just continuously built on that momentum weekend after weekend. And it slowly, it allowed me to gain these opportunities after college hockey, which was unbelievable in itself.
Yeah, and that's not to say. I mean, I think a lot of people think that the Canadian University Hockey League, like, it's not a as great of a league, right? So, and this is the thing, like, you played 2 years there, and you're probably one of the only players to step out of there and play in the NHL the next year. So, talk about your transition from CIS. You played 2 years, and then you signed pro with Toronto, and what that looked like after your university career.
Yeah, so I will say too, I played a big hand in probably recruiting you and DaCosta to come down to UMB from our time at Mind to Muscle. So yeah, my what happened in at college is that I went to a pro camp just before attending school, and I had a good camp, and a couple other teams were at this rookie tournament. And after my first year, I actually got a call from the Toronto Maple Leafs organization, and they wanted to sign me to a 1 year American League deal. And
So
a
your
lot of
first
people,
year of school, sorry to cut you off there. After your first
sorry,
year of
yeah,
school?
yeah, first year school,
Okay.
and it was enticing offer, but we had a good team coming back for that second year. You were coming in, a lot of other players were coming in. There was a lot more opportunity individually to make certain teams. There was a FISU games team that I was sort of looking at and setting goals to make. And then our team as a whole, we were going to be a contender to win a national championship. So a lot of that played in a factor. And two, I had few years left of school packages. So I just made the decision to stick it out, continuously work on myself, because once I got into the pro game, it was just going to be eat or be eaten, and I knew that me as a player needed at least another year to figure myself out. So yeah, the decision was to stay again, and everything worked out. I made that FISU game team. We won a national championship, and then funny enough, and I put up good numbers again the second year, and the same offer was there at the end of the second year. Nothing improved, nothing was lost. And at that time, my coach, my teammates were just like, listen, you've done enough. Just go take a chance on yourself, because you don't know if you'll ever get this opportunity again. So not to say I was pushed out the door, but I had a lot of encouragement from a lot of different people to bet on myself. And like you said, in 12 months, I was playing at the at the time was the Moncton Coliseum, where we finished our last game playing against the Moncton Blue Eagles, winning a championship. And I believe it was 11 months later, I was playing in my first NHL game in Washington against the Washington Capitals.
It's incredible. It's pretty amazing because sometimes like when you're in that situation, you're 2 years into CIS, you get the same opportunity, which is not like a better opportunity. It's kind of the same contract that they offered you the year before. It's not necessarily like they're like, oh, here's an NHL contract, here's an American League deal, but you bet on yourself. And I think this is so huge. Is like you took a chance. You're 2 years into school. You probably knew that okay, you can come back for another year, but really, is it going to push your career forward? Obviously, you'll get another year of school done, but you took a chance. And let's talk about that first year of pro. And you're going from, major junior, 2 years later, CIS. Now you're stepping into an American League locker room, training camps, and all that stuff. Walk us through that summer, like after. So we won that national championship together at the end of March. Walk us through like the next 6 months before getting into that NHL game and just all of it, like the training camp and the whole process there.
Yeah, it was it was a nerve-wracking summer and a lot of training. I stayed in Fredericton that summer and trained there. I was continuously doing school. So that was sort of my plan B. I was like, okay, if I can set this up right to where I can continuously come back to Fredericton in the summer, pound away at school, and then do online courses throughout the year, you know, I'll be no worse off if I was to leave now versus staying. I'll be able to get the school done in the same amount of time. And yeah, so you know, completely invested in terms of my fitness routine, my dieting, and just wanted to make hit the ground running as soon as I got to Toronto to make the biggest impact I could. So the training camp went very well. Um, and we actually have another familiar person between the two of us. Greg Gilbert was the coach at the time for the Marlies, and Greg was your coach in Mississauga when St. Mike's versus Mississauga. So I was very familiar with Greg from years prior. So sort of a familiar face for me. And there was a little bit of turmoil at the end of camp, first bit of the year, as to figuring out where I would fit in the lineup. Um, at the time, you could only dress, I believe it was like 18 players or 17 players. So like, we always had to dress 11 forwards. So it made it sort of crucial as to who was going to be in the lineup in and out. And anyways, I figured it out to where I was one of the three centermen usually to be playing. And there was a pivotal moment that I got to give credit to where, you know, you need people in your corner and people who are fighting for you. And if you don't have those people, sometimes you don't get these opportunities. And I had a good friend who's actually with Team USA World Junior Team right now, Reed Cashman, and he got sent down to the East Coast League probably a week prior, and he gave me a call. He said, "Hey, are you coming down?" I was just like, "What do you mean?" He's like, "My coach just pulled me into the office and he said, like, we're getting you down here this week." And, just soul crushing as to like, there was my chance and nothing ever happened. And I just continued playing, continued playing. And the year went by. I had a great year, got called up, and I want to make sort of a short of this story, but I went for lunch with Gibby that summer because sometimes when I have like burning questions, I need to have them answered to see like what went on behind the scenes here for me to get this opportunity. And at a casual lunch, we were just talking. I said like, why? I had a buddy who called me and told me I was being sent down. What happened? And he stuck his neck out on the line for me. He said that to management at the time, he's like, if we are sending him down, what message are we sending to our group? So he stuck his neck out for me, which allowed me more games in the American League. And what I did with those games was, statistically wise, was some of the best hockey I'd played in my whole life. And especially at an American League level, I think I was going like 24 points in 30 some games in my like as a rookie, which allowed me to, turn that into an NHL contract at Christmas and be able to play in that game. But it only happens if you have guys in your corner, and Gibby was that guy. And I'll forever be indebted to him, because in professional sports, that's how fast careers can be derailed. So yeah.
Yeah, that's a pretty crazy story. Also, too, the fact that you like sat down with them and asked them the question. I don't think that's a very common thing that a lot of players will do, but it's pretty
There's a
amazing.
there's a couple more ones that I had. I'll tell you a little bit later in the pod, but there's a couple more questions I've asked people, and they give me direct answers, which is great.
Hey, at least you get the answers, and I think that's a lot of it too when you're playing in pro sports. That I'm sure a lot of people don't know. Like a lot of times, you don't ever get those answers. You don't ever know what you did right or did wrong to either create or not get an opportunity. And I think just getting that answer for you gives you peace of mind, and it probably made you even want to show up even more for that guy in the future. And actually, Gibby for me was the guy who gave me an opportunity to play in the OHL. Like my first 2 years in the league, I didn't play. I was traded twice, ended up in Mississauga, and he gave me that opportunity, which literally gave me a career. Because if you don't play and you're 19 in the OHL, you're pretty close to done. Like, or at least you're probably not on the same trajectory as you would be having getting those games. So yeah, Gibby was a big thing for a big factor for me as well. So now you've played a year in the American League. You've really turned it up. I mean, you're all the talk at school for us too, because now you're seeing a guy who, and for those that don't know, like players that go from the CIS to the NHL is not super common, especially 1 year out. Like usually there's a bit of a journey there, and then you might get a chance later on. But typically to go like you said, less than a year later, you're going from a CIS championship final to the NHL is not a very. You're probably one of one, or one of like maybe three that have ever done it. I'm guessing one of one. What was that like now? So now you got your NHL game, and you went up and down, and then you amassed over 80 games in the next couple years. What was that like after you got that game? What was that taste like? What And then what happened after that?
Well, my first game, I dislocated my shoulder, so uh, I had a lot of time to reflect after that year. But honestly, just living in the moment, like, was super. Like, even now, when I talk about it, you can look at it as to imagine if you didn't get hurt, like what your career could have been, or imagine if this and this happened. I'm so grateful for the time that I did get to spend in hockey, because how many guys make it who had 50 points as an overage in you know, in major junior? How many guys make it that go to the CIS? How many guys make it undrafted to the NHL? Like, it's just like a continuous, like, defying odds, resilient type of attitude that I've taken, throughout my journey. So, reflecting on the, like, what that taste was after the first game, it was just like, it was super humbling to say that I was there. I was really enjoying the ride, right? Like, I was living it up. Like, I was obviously rehabbing and trying to get back, and had a couple setbacks in the next 2 years. So, dislocated shoulder, torn rotator cuff, and then not even, I think, maybe another 18 months later, completely tore my knee, ACL, MCL, PCL, like, huge injuries to have to overcome. And then from that first game, I think my next game didn't come until 3 or 4 years later. So, and a lot of these hurdles along the way that I had to overcome. So, it was just like, sometimes you're just not looking too far ahead. You're looking for that next step, right? You're just trying to make progress and trying to stay relevant and be a good teammate, and do all those things along the way to make sure that, when your time comes, that you're ready for it again. And that's sort of the mindset that I took each and every day when I was in Toronto.
Yeah, which is incredible. And I think the biggest thing there is like you said, how do you stay relevant? And this is something that I think goes like overlooked sometimes. It's like now at that time, you're getting older. Now you're like your mid 20s, probably at that time after school, right? So then new prospects are coming in, fresh faces are coming in, guys who are higher draft picks are coming in, and now all of a sudden you have to stay relevant, like you said, and stay like top of mind of the organization, that you're doing the right things, being a good teammate, working hard, so that you're going to get those chances again, or at least be able to stick around to give yourself a chance again through those injuries. I think that's a really awesome lesson for anybody, really, and how just keep pushing things forward along the way. And then a couple years later, you got your chance again, you know, played even more games, and then you finished up in Columbus before heading over to Europe, right? So what was that
Yeah.
like? Getting a change of scene and continuing the journey.
Yeah, it was it was amazing. The next time I got called up, um, we were on the road, and Dallas Eakins, the coach now, and you know, it was another, just learning under another great coach. I've had a lot of unbelievable coaches who are now probably all coaching in the NHL, or majority of them are, um, and a lot of lessons learned. Um, the journey was just incredible, and the second time getting back up there for an extended period of time, you relished it even more. My first year in Toronto, like, just had a phenomenal year. It didn't work out in terms of like contractual. If you were to look at my first back half of that first year, considered up, um, I probably, you would look at getting a one-way deal off of that type of like statistics, but it didn't work out. And then competition came into the fold. Like you said, there's new players, trades, everybody's coming in every year, and lost my spot come the next training camp. So again, some more like adversity, had to be resilient. And it took again another half the year until I got up. So, uh, so many roadblocks and challenges along the way. And like, I got a change of scenery, went to Columbus, didn't have a great experience down there, in terms of like playing or coaching staff. Uh, yeah, it was difficult, but then from there went to had a couple stints, had a stint in Europe the next year, came back to the American League, and then permanently went overseas for another 5 years, which is some of the best times in my life. We got to travel, we had children over there, um, lots of great friends that we made along the way, and just the way, culturally, the way even the game of hockey is played just is completely different, and the atmosphere in the arenas. So just to see that fanfare across the world was really eye opening.
Yeah, it's hard to put into words like what it's like playing over in Europe. And
Oh, like,
yeah,
right? Like, it's just it's wild. It's a different level.
yeah, and it actually was cool. Like you and I and Freezy, who was our captain from school, all ended up playing against each other in like a summer exhibition tournament, which is always like, it's always nice to come full circle. That was like probably 10 years after we had finished at school
Mhm.
together. So that's a incredible career. I mean, better part of a decade, over a decade of pro hockey, which is always amazing. Um, I want to flip the script a little bit. So during that time, something that you and I have always been interested in is real estate. And you're the first player I know who, I remember like going to your place one time and seeing these like real estate course CDs at your house. So you were like the first player that I knew that got their license, well, like along the way. And tell me about like how you got into real estate, how you started to like real estate, and getting your license and all that kind of stuff.
I think I'll give, to your goalie tandem back at school, I'll give Reg Borsier a lot of credit. He gave me this book. I think it was called, The ABCs of Real Estate Investing. and read it just like another book, like The Wealthy Barber. It's just like sort of those fundamental things with real estate. And yeah, it just, when I got a little bit of my own money when I was in Toronto, it's just like, where can I like put this so that I don't, one, spend it, and two, can sort of get a little nice little return. And it just slowly became a thing of interest to where real estate is always very interesting to me in terms of what you can get, where you can get, why it's valuable, why it appreciates, all of these things, right? So, a teammate of mine, Alex Foster, and we got in on our first sort of like uh, pre-construction or sort of during construction home purchase. We bought them in the same neighborhood at, I'm sure your listeners would be familiar with the QEW in Islington, and these brownstone houses. And at the time, were only 484,000 is what the pre-construction price was at the time. I know probably it doesn't seem this way, but at the time it was quite a bit of money. And now these houses are, I would say, 1.3, 1.4 in that range. And I guess the thinking here in real estate should be looked at as a long-term play because it just appreciates. As you'll see, Mike probably talks a lot about the trends, and over the historical data of real estate, it continues to appreciate and continues to set record limits. So that first home purchase sort of set the course for me as to interest in real estate, and then just seeing if I could do it personally on the side to where maybe I could save myself some money if I did it myself, or two, maybe this is a sort of a career that I could pivot into after hockey. Um, Currently, it's not my career that I'm in. I work with RBC, and I'm actually in the real estate industry, but we're commercial banking for real estate construction companies and whatnot. But it's definitely something that has it's a passion in me. I really enjoy that space, that industry. And I do a couple of me and my wife, we do some investing in Prince Edward Island, and we sort of fund some residential builds and multifamily builds. So it's definitely something that it still sort of saves me some money in the end by having the license, but it's just something that I do in my past or in my sort of spare time now.
Yeah, awesome. And I mean, I remember when you bought that place, and we're talking like 10 years ago, right? Like to buy anything for like what year did you buy that in?
I think that's like 2000. I'm trying to think. That's either 2008 or 2009.
Yeah, so just over 10 years. And I mean, right now in Toronto, if like at that price point, you're not even really into one bedroom condo territory these days.
Hmm.
Whereas that was like a three bedroom or maybe four bedroom at the time, beautiful home. And yeah, it just kind of just shows like how over time, especially when you're playing in your career, if you're gonna purchase something earlier in your career and then play another 10 to 12 or 15 years, like the chances of that property going up over that time while you're playing are pretty good. But
Hmm.
yeah, it's definitely something holding on to over time is huge. And now you're licensed in PI.
Yeah, I'm licensed in Prince Edward Island.
Okay, yeah, because we you can't have both, right? Ontario and
No.
PI. So
Well, you can. You just, if you want to sell property, you just need to be licensed in each province.
okay,
So you would just go and you'd get licensed, or you'd work with, I guess you could work with a broker you wouldn't have that commission, but you would share that client type of
okay, or
thing.
just use a referral or something like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, exactly.
Awesome. And so you mentioned what you're doing now. Like when you first retired, you were coaching, and then what was that like? Like transitioning into coaching after playing.
I think that's a lot. For a lot of players, right? It's a safety net for a lot of players. And I say safety net because it's a lot of players, that's all they know. They know hockey, and once the hockey's done, you're just like, how? what can I do within hockey, because this is all I've done over the course of my career. So some guys look to do hockey school, some guys look to do become scouts, some guys look to be coaches, anything within the hockey uh, ecosystem. They're trying to just stay involved, stay relevant, I guess. So for me, it was no different. I had an opportunity. The reason why I stopped playing was because I had this opportunity come up in Moncton, and I didn't have a contract going forward. It was sort of like good timing to be persuaded to stay home, maybe invest in my next career. So I got a jump on that in working in management for the first half of the year, and then transitioned into being a coach, an assistant coach, and was an assistant coach for the next 2 years. But yeah, it's definitely for a lot of players, it's a safety net, staying in that hockey industry.
Yeah, and a lot of guys love it too, though. That's like what they want to do, and I think they know it from like early on, right? Like you can kind of, I feel, tell the guys who are going to stay in the game just by the way they, I don't know, the way they train or whatever. I always had that feeling of like, oh, that guy's probably going to be a really good coach one day. I always feel like I thought that of a lot of players, and they ended up to be real, or they currently are really awesome coaches. And then, so now what you're doing, like you transitioned from hockey totally to something totally new, and now you're again in the more in the real estate space with RBC. And what has that been looking like? How do you like it? What are your day to days like going from a pro sport environment to that?
Yeah, I love it. I truthfully love it. I actually, so when I was let go in Moncton, I had a sort of a 12-month window of uncertainty as to what was going to transpire. So what I did over those 12 months was I had a couple of meetings with some mentors of mine, and just really tried to lay out where my life was going and what I was going to do if I wanted to change the course of action, like what I needed to do right then and there in those 12 months, because I had a window to do it if I needed to do it. And that's what I did. I applied to, well, and during the course of my hockey career, I ended up getting my degree from, uh, you know,
Awesome.
doing online courses and summer school. So I did get my BBA. And then during this 12 months, I applied to some other schools to get my MBA. So from last December to now, I've been enrolled at Queen's University at Smith School of Business, and in January I'll complete my MBA there. So that was something that I felt that I needed to get done if I wanted to change where I was going or leverage myself as being a good candidate for positions like I'm in right now. So that has led me to here. It took a LinkedIn interview and sort of like talk to a few different people. They felt that I was a strong candidate for this position, and now, yeah, I'm here working in commercial banking for RBC, going to be, once training is done, in the real estate industry. And the day to day is we're relationship managers, so we are just out servicing the clients, making sure that all their needs are being met, and if they have any questions, that we can provide solid answers and just try and help them grow as much as they need. And it's been a great experience so far. I've got a mentor that I'm working with currently, and it's been amazing just to see how some of these companies within the city of St. John have sort of entrench themselves in the community, and you can see how much and what these people mean to the community, because they took a chance on St. John, and let's say specifically the downtown core, and they re-energized this city and sort of like completely overhauled the look and feel of the downtown. And it has a lot to do with people, these investors, these contractors, these companies that are, always out there looking for opportunity, one, but two, to improve their own communities.
That's incredible. And I'm sure like it, when you're going in and meeting with these people, it gives you good energy too, to, want to help them and service them properly. And which is obviously, you're awesome at that kind of stuff. So I'm sure it'll be an awesome future for you in that business for sure. I mean, is there anything else you wanted to add? I mean, I thank you so much for coming on. You're my first guest. It's pretty awesome. One thing I would like to ask you is, where can people reach out if they want to reach out to you? If you're open to that, if someone has any questions about, life after hockey or, transitioning like that, if you're open to that, where can they reach you?
Yeah, they can. It's been so long ago. I don't know what my Twitter handle is. I think it's dboyce47, or Instagram outeast47. Yeah, if anybody has any questions in terms of life after hockey or that transition period, I know it's definitely a scary time, especially for hockey players. Uncertainty is something that we don't deal with very well, because we're so scheduled from our day to day. You know where you need to be when you need to be there. So when it comes, when the curtain closes and you don't know what's on the other side, it's an uneasy feeling. So uh, knowing that if I can, guide you through or help you in any way, speaking from someone that's been there and done that. Same with you, Mike. You've been there and done that. Wasn't easy, but hockey does end. That's the reality of it, and you need to set yourself up for the best plan B possible. But the other thing I wanted to tell you was the second story that I didn't say, as to the direct question, was to, at the end of the year, I think it was my first year in the NHL. Ron Wilson, we had our exit meetings, and Ron Wilson, a lot of people give him grief, but I think he was unbelievable. He was such a great guy. And uh, I asked him, I said, so I just need to know. I was just like, why me? How did I get called up? And he's like, truthfully, we called for Christian Hansen, but he got hurt, and then we just said, I don't care, give us anybody. So you know what I mean? Like that's how it is, and that's the reality of it. Is that you never know who it's going to be. It could be you. It could be the next guy. Just be ready.
That's awesome. Well, what a way to end. Let's end it there. Thanks so much, Boyce, for joining us, and thank you everybody for tuning in. Oh, if you are watching on YouTube or on Spotify, Apple Music, if you want to just hit that follow button or like, subscribe, that'd be awesome. And we'll talk to you soon.